Hello, hello, hello. Video is live. We are live. I'm confirming we're live. Triple checking we're live. I'm just going to go into the group. Hello, 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 everybody. I'm just doing some clicking here.
Oh, I even got a message saying that you're live on my side.
Amazing. Yes, we are officially here. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and minimize that. So hello, everybody. It is fantastic to be here with you. So funny thing is that Christy and I did this last week. Some of you were trying to follow the live event. And I forgot to press one of the buttons to make it live. So this is our second attempt. Take two. Into this interview. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of prelude what this interview is all about. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Christy, and then I've got a series of questions that I'm going to be asking Christy, and I really want you all to pay very close attention to the message that she has to give today. So this inspiring change interview is really designed to ignite the passion and tenacity that lives inside each of you. And if you've been following me, you know that I firmly believe that there's greatness that lives inside each and every one of you. So I invite you to listen to Christy's story and message in hopes that her tenacity, her resilience, and courage will demonstrate that we are all the drivers behind the steering wheel, and that no matter the adversity, we are in control of our thoughts, we are in control of our feelings and our beliefs and the outcomes of our decisions. So through her writing, teaching, and mentorship, Christy helps others overcome adversity. And I'm going to open up your bio, Christy, because I'd like to read that as well. And I didn't have that open yet. So pardon me as I grab that. Here it is. So I want to read you Christy's bio so I can truly introduce you to this magnificent human who I've known for quite some time now. I actually don't know how long we've known each other for.
Stillen was little, because I remember like daycare.
Okay, so he's 14 now. Shocking, I know. Cool. He's in high school. Okay, so this is Christy, and Christy, like last time, you're probably going to have to help me with some of the words.
Of course.
So Christy is an entrepreneur at heart, launching her first business in the event planning industry in her mid-20s. She was recognized by the Chamber of Commerce with an award for Young Business Person of the Year before she turned 30, which of course for me is of no surprise, and had the opportunity to work on hundreds of events and weddings throughout that time in her life. After a decade working as an event planner, her health began to decline, and she slowly transitioned out of the events industry and back towards her roots in public relations, offering freelance writing and marketing skills, which were less physically demanding. As her health continued to decline and become more complicated, she delved more into her spiritual journey as an energy healer, as a way to find purpose through her challenging experiences. After years of seemingly disconnected symptoms, she was finally diagnosed with a rare genetic connective tissue disorder called
Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome,
which was the missing piece of her complex and very misunderstood health challenges. During the pandemic, she ended up in a significant IBD flare. Can you tell us what IBD stands for?
Inflammatory bowel disease.
Which ultimately resulted in an emergency, life-saving ileostomy?
Yes.
Surgery in which her entire colon was removed. Through all of the adversity and uncertainty, she was able to face each challenge with grace and resilience, and aspires to help others on their personal journey and how to deal with adversity with a positive mindset through her writing, teaching, and mentorship. And I'm going to provide you with her website after this so that you can get in touch with her if you've got any questions or if you feel that she would be able to support you. So thank you, Christy, very much for being here. I am really grateful that not only did you take the time last Tuesday, but that you were still willing to come back and share your message again with me tonight. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Oh gosh, my pleasure, as you know. So I'm going to start off with the very first question, which really is to allow everybody else to understand exactly the magnitude of what you've been through. So tell us about what led to your diagnosis.
So I've had muscular skeletal issues like my entire life. I was born with a dislocated hip. I've had numerous weird disconnected or seemingly disconnected issues pretty much my entire life. But it wasn't until about 8 years ago, I was in a little fender bender. And at the time, I didn't think really anything of it. It was, I didn't seem to be harmed. There was no damage to the car. So I didn't really think much of it. And then in the coming weeks after that, it was kind of like Pandora's box was opened. I ended up going to a chiro, and there was a vertebrae actually in my neck that we usually have a natural C in our, and mine was positioned opposite. So my nervous system, everything was kind of in overdrive. My fight or flight, the parasympathetic nervous system was pretty much turned on full time. And I started having all of these like seemingly disconnected issues. The worst symptoms that I had were GI related. And so my first diagnosis, as we kind of mentioned before, was IBD, which stands for inflammatory bowel disease. Not to be confused with IBS, which is
irritable bowel syndrome.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's no actual inflammation, there's no disease. It's the inflammation that really causes the issues, the serious issues in disease. So that was my first diagnosis about 7 years ago. And then I got into remission. I went on my first round of steroids and anti-inflammatory meds, and I changed my diet. And I thought, oh, I have this, like I've got this. But I didn't feel well. And I started to have more and more issues. And the first time I ever heard EDS, Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, was actually my uncle. And he said, have you ever heard of EDS? I kind of feel like maybe it matches what you've been going through and could explain a lot of things. And so I Googled EDS right away, and it was pretty much like the missing piece of the puzzle that I didn't have for 30 something years of my life. It was pretty much every single thing was check mark, check mark, check mark. And so I went to my doctor. I have an incredibly supportive GP, and she started the process, sent me to a geneticist at CHIO. And then I was also sent to, it's called the Good Life Clinic in Toronto, and it's an EDS clinic specifically. So EDS, Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, is a rare genetic connective tissue disorder. And so when you think of connective tissue, it's essentially the glue that holds your body together. Mine is a little bit more stretchy. And so I have a harder time holding my joints together. So dislocations and subluxations, which are not full dislocations, but it's when the joints pop out and I can kind of feel like, something's not right there. Yeah. So again, I had that all my life.
And I know because I used to train you.
You did.
We had to really work on stability in your joints. But to your point, if your joints are so mobile, I mean, that's where you have all of your nerves innervate, right? So they pass by those joints. So I can only imagine that it's not just discomfort, but you could be dealing with nerve impingements as well. And then your vascular system, like even just impinging against any of your blood vessels that are no longer able to provide blood or oxygen to certain areas of your body.
Totally. It's a very complex and actually really painful. Like a lot of people, when growing up, I was told, oh, you're double jointed, you're hypermobile, but it was never connected to that could cause pain. Right. And so I live in a very high baseline of pain and always have, but I assumed that everyone else was the same. Right. And in the same boat because I didn't know any different. So there's a lot of pain, a lot of muscle exhaustion because my muscles are having to work overtime just to hold my body up. Just for me to be standing upright. Like you'll see I have KT tape on. All these things kind of help hold my body together. So it's a rare condition, and our mascot is a zebra. And the reason for that, which I kind of love, is that in med school, doctors are told when you hear hoofbeats, you think of a horse. You don't think of a zebra. And so that kind of, because we're rare, people don't think of us, and especially because we're so multi-system affected, it's a very hard diagnosis to get. The other thing that makes it even more complicated is that there's 14 different subtypes of EDS. So there's some that are have specific genetic codes identified already, and then there's some that don't. So it's very complicated. There's a lot of comorbid conditions that go along with that, including POTS and mast cell activation. So POTS,
and those are yours.
Yes, I have. We call it the trifecta of EDS. So it's kind of, they're very common, these three. There's lots of, like the IBD is also one, but it's not one of the most common comorbid conditions. So POT stands for Postural Orthostatic Tachycardia. And basically what that means is that if I go from lying down to standing up too quickly, I can get really dizzy, I faint. Basically what's happening is an autonomic nervous system condition. And so my body has a really hard time, once the blood goes down to my feet, to push it back up the rest of my body. And so because of that, my heart rate overcompensates. It speeds up to try to help push the pressure of the blood up. And it also affects my blood pressure. It affects heart rate, digestion, a lot of things that you don't necessarily think about that are autonomic, but are an issue for, for my body. Another thing with POTS is that we have a lower blood volume. And so to compensate for that, we have to drink, I drink about 3 liters of electrolytes a day, just to kind of help offset the lower blood volume in my body. And the other thing that's kind of weird is that most cardiologists, you're never going to hear a cardiologist say you need to up your salt intake. For me, to be able to keep me hydrated, I do need. And so it's,
I guess it's to control your blood pressure too, because yours plummets, right?
It does. And I go into dehydration really quickly, a lot quicker than normal people, like healthy people. And then the third piece of that puzzle is mast cell activation, or MCAS. And what that is, it's an immune response that acts as an allergy. So I can get hives, rashes, anything you think of connected to like a severe allergic reaction. That's how my body responds, but it's not an allergy. It's an immune response, which means because it's not a true allergy, I can have, let's say I drink something and I can drink it every day for 2 weeks. And then on the 15th day, I can drink it and have a reaction. So it's my body can be good one day and then the next day just be like, no, I don't like that today. So it's very unpredictable. you kind of touched on like that multi-system symptoms and what that maybe looks like. And so just to give a better kind of understanding of what that looks like is, so for me, my first symptoms were all GI. So I had like a lot of nausea and vomiting. I was on a higher dose of anti-nausea meds than chemo patients, like a much higher dose, and I would still be vomiting. Severe constipation, bloating. There was like 2 years where I looked pregnant because I was just so bloated.
Wow.
Lack of appetite, atrophy in my pancreas, prolapses and rectal cells before I had my surgery. And again, to put that into perspective, is that most people that experience these kinds of things are women that have gone through labor.
Yeah.
And I haven't.
Yeah.
So it's again, my skin is stretchier because of the EDS, which kind of causes that. I also dealt with bleeding and malabsorption and malnutrition. So that's just GI related stuff.
Yeah.
Then
and
like
that does nothing to do with your heart.
Yeah.
And the fact that you were, in cardiac rehab for.
Exactly. I was in cardiac rehab, and it was kind of funny because we were doing opposite of everything else that everyone else was doing. We do seated because we can't, if we get up too quick, like it can be serious. So like we're on the recumbent bikes and like being told to drink more, like eat more salt.
Yeah.
So it was,
drink your salt water, stay seated.
Exactly. So now that I've kind of learned how to exercise with my body instead of fighting it, I've had a lot less injuries than in the past. So I have like neurosystem issues. When you think of neurotransmitters like serotonin, 90% of that is actually formed in the gut. And so when you have issues in the gut, again, it's going to cause more neurologic type issues. And like you were saying, the nerve endings and like that kind of pain is definitely connected to this.
You're going to have impingements, blood pressure issues. And then whenever you talked about the neurotransmitters and issues with your gut, serotonin really affects mood.
It does. Serotonin, dopamine. So I've been on SSRIs pretty much the entire process since my health has declined. And now that I don't have a colon, it's something that I'll have to continue for the rest of my life, just to be able to help maintain those levels in my brain and in the rest of my body. I have insomnia. We were talking a little bit earlier about sleep and how important sleep actually is.
Yeah, you and I had that sidebar before we got on. Yes, we did.
So
you just mentioned, I just want to go to something that you mentioned. So you can continue where you left off, but I don't want to forget about the story about not having your colon, because I think that's really going to lend itself to what you shared so far. Really provides us with kind of the magnitude of, essentially since the day you were born with, your hip dislocation to, having a car accident, ending up shaking up Pandora's box, having all of these symptoms that didn't seem to be related, which I would imagine, despite having, and correct me if I'm wrong, but regardless of having a supportive general physician, if people can't figure out what the problem is, after a while, you would think that they would think it was all in your head.
I have spent decades being gaslit by the medical industry. Because they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And POTS from the outside can look a lot like having an anxiety attack. Because it's the flushing, it's the heart palpitations. And so the number of times where I was told, oh, it's anxiety, it's just in your head, like decades and decades of that. And
then
so
add on the serotonin. If you're not producing the proper amount of serotonin, then there is this mood, I can't think of the word, but it affects your mood.
100%.
Certainly can lead to anxiety as well as depression.
Yep.
And I just think there's just so much to just that story.
Yeah.
And then layer on the fact that you could be eating something and be perfectly fine. And then all of a sudden you develop a sensitivity and allergy to it, where your body reacts. So talk about that a little bit more.
So starting in 2020, the world is kind of going into this COVID pandemic, and I start an IBD flare. And usually the protocol for that is to put you on steroids and then the anti-inflammatory meds. For me, it wasn't working. I was on high doses of IV steroids and it wasn't working. And so the next step usually is to try biologics. And so I tried a biologic, which it's an injection based in chemotherapy. Actually, it was originally designed as a chemo drug, and then realized that there was other applications to people with autoimmune disorders. Unfortunately, in my case, I ended up having a huge mast cell activation response to the biologic, and which ultimately ended me in the hospital for an emergency ileostomy surgery. And basically what an ileostomy surgery is so for me, they removed my entire colon, which is an organ that's 6 feet long. And they make a hole in your abdomen where they pull out the end of your small bowel and create what's called a stoma. And so the stoma is on the outside of my body, and that's kind of where the waste goes through at this point. It was supposed to be a 3-hour surgery that ended up being 9 hours because of complications. I had to have a whole C-section because my colon was so compacted with stool that they couldn't get it out of my belly button. And so I had a lot of complications going into it because I was so sick. And then I had a lot of complications afterwards. And going into, a life-saving surgery, but a huge surgery, a massive surgery, it's scary. And that's kind of, it's a huge uncertainty what's going to happen. So I went into it being told that was going to be permanent. So I kind of had to really quickly be able to accept what was happening, not just with the surgery, but how my life was going to look afterwards. And so I ended up having a hernia and a lot of scar tissue adhesions that led to obstructions. And so my first year almost living with a stoma had a lot of challenges. And I had a second surgery just this last September, which created a new stoma. They had to relocate the stoma because I was having so many issues, and then start the process of a J pouch, which essentially in the next year I'll have my final surgery, which is going to kind of remove the stoma. But going into that surgery, I thought it was going to be permanent. So
Right.
That's kind of a bonus now that I'll be able to kind of have it reversed. But
so I just want to take a second, and we're really going into your story. And I think it's really important that first of all, thank you, because I know that you've been sharing your story so that other people, to advocate for other people, to show people that, you can get through scary things. But I really, And so that people understand that some of these things, like talking about poop and your bowel and stuff, that it's okay to talk about. But what I appreciate the fact that you're doing today with us is that, we still have other questions that we're going to get to, but it is important for people to understand kind of the full timeline of your medical history, so that when we get to those other questions, they can really see that what you did to get through all that really has teeth. It really has merit. There's tons of value in these next answers that you're going to provide to the questions. But one of the things that I really want to do is, all of your life, you've been dealing with different conditions where you could wake up with a dislocation. Clearly there's pain attached to that. There's no question, dizzy spells. Exercise for you looked very differently than it did for the majority of people. You could end up with food sensitivities or flare-ups out of the blue where you were able to eat the foods before. So everything for you is just very always up and down. And then you ended up with this flare-up with your intestinal tract that actually required a life-saving surgery during a pandemic. And we kind of glossed over that part. So while I've summarized your life, I think that part where you're in the hospital during a pandemic and they're about to do a life-saving surgery on you, that is going to change your life completely, right? And we talked about this last time. To me, I equated your surgery to like somebody going in and getting amputated. That you're going to come out with something missing, something that, is going to be different, that you're going to have to get used to. Right. So I want you to talk about what that experience, if you're okay with that, you did with me last time. So I'm assuming you're okay with that, but just to talk about what that experience was like for you in the hospital before going into that life-saving surgery, because that really speaks to you as a person as well.
Thank you. So, going through this at any time would be challenging. But going through it during a pandemic just added so many more layers of uncertainty to it. Going down the halls, like there's nothing that, unless you've experienced it, to actually go through those halls and see full hallways closed because there was COVID outbreak. It's scary on a good day.
Like a zombie apocalypse almost.
It really was. Like, I thought I was aware. And then I remember them the first time they kind of cart you around in the bed from one plate, like to get one test to the other. And it was shocking even for me. And I spend a lot of time in hospital settings to see full wards being closed down. And then on the personal side, to the first few days that I was actually in the hospital, I was alone. And so, you're facing what's really scary, and you're essentially, having to do it alone. And the staff and the nurses and the doctors were just so incredible. But it was also heartbreaking to hear their stories and hear the number of times that they were holding someone's hand as they passed of COVID, and they were alone. They were the support system. And so I have so much respect for them and everything that they did in order to kind of get me through something that was so traumatic and life-changing.
In the end, though, and you know this because you do the same thing that I do, you can get all of the external support that you need, but in the end, you have to have the mental fortitude, right? And you have that, and that mental fortitude. I mean, you've got family, you had beautiful staff that were willing to help you out as best that they could as well. But you were going through this in a pandemic. It was a life-saving surgery. It wasn't just, repairing a broken arm with pins. You were going to come out in a different differently than whenever you went in.
Yeah.
And by the sounds of it, excuse me, you said that the surgery was going to be irreversible. Like there wasn't going to be another option for you, that they were permanently removing your colon, and that would result in this external stoma that you would have to just get used to living with for the rest of your life.
Pretty much. And the very first stoma I saw was my own.
Yeah.
And so that knowing that you're going through that and it's going to happen, and the actual reality of like looking down and seeing my stoma for the first time, like it's not really something you can prepare yourself for. It's just like you said, a part of me was changed forever. Regardless if this is reversed, like my colon is not being replaced. Like I'll forever live without a colon. And so it's a pretty intense experience. And then in an emergency situation, there was no guarantee that I was going to have it done by a colorectal surgeon.
Right.
Which is also crazy. And I didn't find that out because I had met with a colorectal surgeon. And if I had had the surgery the day before, I would have had the surgery by a colorectal surgeon. What ended up happening was me showing up at the OR door and being told, oh, Dr. Malou isn't actually doing your surgery today. It's an oncologist who, is great, but she, even the colorectal surgeons didn't have experience really with anyone with EDS. So it was just kind of like, I had to be able to kind of tap in to these things that we're going to talk about in a very short and intense setting.
In a pandemic with surgeons who had not done this type of surgery or weren't accustomed to your particular situation, you were going to end up waking up to a different body than whenever you were put under. And you couldn't have your parents there because you weren't allowed any visitors.
Like, it's a lot.
Oh, that's beyond a lot. Like that's not even remotely okay. So let's go ahead and go into what
for sure.
got
Let's go into the meat of the stuff, like the goods.
Well, no, the meat of the stuff is people need to understand everything that you've been through, because the person that you are and the tools that you used, like I don't think a lot of people would have been able to get through all of the story that you have, And it's not to say you didn't have the challenges, but it is to say that the mental fortitude you have and all of the skills and all of the tools that you use, you still smile. You're such an inspiration. And I just need people to know that there are people out there who've gone through your kind of horrific stories, can live to tell about it and live a magnificent life, and really helping others with their story as well. So what mindset tools did you use specifically to help you to change perspectives when you felt sad or overwhelmed?
So I'm going to share 3 main things and then a little bonus that kind of ties them all together in the end. So I'm going to start simple. And first of all, actually, before I get into that, I want to say that these techniques are things that I didn't just start practicing in the last couple years. They're things that I've practiced and anybody can do that allowed me, when I was in those moments of heightened or crisis, heightened emotions, whatever it was able to tap into that because it's something that I've practiced. So the first thing is breath work. And it's something that a lot of people just might kind of like, no big deal. But the reality is that breath work is incredibly powerful, and it's something that we can all do. And so there's different types of breath work that I use. One of them is called box breathing. And essentially it's starting with your exhale, and you release whatever air is still kind of stagnant. You breathe in for a slow count of 4. You're going to hold the breath for a count of 4. You're going to exhale for a count of 4, and then hold for a count of 4. And you continue that until you feel calmness kind of coming over your body. It's the best and quickest way to help you get into the present moment. And when you're in that present moment, you're not focused on all the other noise. You're focused on what's happening and what you have control of in that moment.
That's it, right? It's what you've got control of.
Yes.
Yeah.
So another technique that I really like that my Reiki master taught me, so you inhale, big belly breath. You're going to inhale and consciously think about relaxing your body. So big belly breath. And then when you exhale, you're going to think of release. And then you're going to push your breath out. Yeah. So what it's doing is giving your brain something to focus on, but also allowing your body to release some of the tension that it might be holding on to. So inhale, relax. Exhale, release. And it's a very powerful thing to kind of get your mind focused on the now and not overwhelmed on what you might be dealing with.
So it's like a dissociation technique, like we would use in neuro-linguistic programming or CBD or CBT.
CBD is something different.
Right? Yeah. Cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah.
Where I love that. So for me, the first thing I think of is obviously the breath in, but the fact that it's a forceful exhale, you're giving yourself permission to, push it out of you, almost like you're letting it go, and you're creating spaciousness between the negative energy that you're moving away from the body, right? Yeah. And that's that dissociation of. So I love that one.
Thank you. It also helps take away that stagnant energy that you might be holding on to and releasing it.
Yeah.
And giving yourself permission to release it. And that's why it's important to also consciously think of relax and release as you're doing it. The second thing is a shift in mindset, which is hugely important. When you go from thinking about whatever it is that you're facing, whether it's health challenges, whether it's hard relationships, getting yourself motivated to do that workout, whatever it is, you're going from that state of which is kind of a victim mode. It's like, why me? Why do I have to do this? Yeah. When you're in situations, significant situations, that people can kind of spiral into negative thought patterns.
Yeah.
When you focus on what is the lesson, what am I meant to learn from this experience? What is this experience teaching me? It's very powerful, and it gets you out of that victim mode and into an empowering mode, because it's giving you, again, that control over your thoughts. And when you bring awareness to your thoughts, some people might not even realize that their thoughts tend to lean on the negative side. Yeah. And so a powerful technique, again, that my Reiki master taught me is this. It's called cancel. And when you have a thought that comes into your mind, and it's something that you don't want to keep, you don't want to hold on to, all you have to do is say cancel. And at first it's going to feel weird. Like, what? Cancel. Every time you have a thought that might be a little bit negative or something that you really don't want, again, to hold on to. Cancel is an easy technique, but it brings awareness to your thoughts so that you can then choose, do I want that?
Yeah.
No, I want something positive. And it's the first step. The more you do it, the more aware of your thoughts you become. So the more aware of your thoughts, awareness you have in your thoughts, it trickles into all areas of your life and really helps you live a more positive and authentic life just in general, even if you're not facing hardship.
Yes.
So yeah,
I love that.
affirmations.
I love so you talked about the breath work and the two different options for the breath work. And then you talked about, I call it a pattern interrupt sequence. So we spend so much time ruminating that we could literally go an entire week where we're still feeling flustered.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh God, I can't believe I'm still pissed off about what happened, last week. I probably should get over that, but we spent the whole week doing that. But I love how you're creating this sense of awareness. And for me, with my clients, a lot of times we create awareness around their physiology. How are they feeling in their body? And we use that as a trigger, as a flag to kind of go, oh, I'm pissed off because my chest is feeling tight. What am I thinking? Creating the awareness. And then how can I interrupt the pattern? I love the cancel because it's kind of an immediate tool that you can use, where as soon as you start to feel whether it's physiology changing or whether it's the thoughts that you're aware of right away, you say cancel, and it's kind of like a squeegee that just kind of gets rid of, that gets rid of the thoughts that you're thinking. I think that's absolutely brilliant. I love that.
I like little easy things that are going to be easy to incorporate into your daily life.
Yes.
And so I start with the breath work, then mindset. And then the third part for me, the component for me, which is the biggest, is connecting with something higher than yourself. And for me, I do that through meditation. I'm able to connect with source or with the universe, whatever words resonate with you, it's fine. But
it could be prayer.
So people who are religious, prayer is a form. I was also thinking athletes, that idea of getting into that zone, feeling like you're in the zone. All of these things are different ways of how people can connect to something higher than themselves. And for me, it gave me purpose in what I was going through. And it also, last time we kind of talked about that feeling of, feeling alone. And when you're connected to something higher than yourself, it's you don't feel alone. Right. And I think a lot of people during this pandemic especially have dealt with a lot of isolation, which has led to mental health issues. And there's a huge mental health crisis going on. And so things like this can really help people in their day-to-day lives get through whatever it is they're getting through, whatever they're faced with. And so meditation, people get frustrated with meditation because although it's simple, it's not easy. It's called a practice for a reason. And so it took me many years to get to that point where I felt I got a glimpse of what it would be to have nothing in your mind, right? That what you're kind of going for in meditation. And so if you're struggling, there's all kinds of different apps or guided meditations to kind of help get you used to it before going into, so the meditation for me has been a huge lifesaver.
And when you talk about, so yes, absolutely, it's the sense of not being alone, because I would imagine with such a diagnosis that's just not really common, that's so rare, there could be that sense of being alone for sure. And the fact that you're able to connect with something which is greater so that you never feel alone. And then you also described it as giving yourself a sense of purpose. And what I really appreciated about that is that in doing that, and again, please, if I'm putting words in your mouth, correct me if I'm wrong, but for me, the way I interpret that is that it means that you're not identifying yourself as this person with, these diseases,
Yes.
and these conditions. And it gives you this purpose outside of what you're experiencing.
Yeah. To me, part of what I feel like my life purpose is, and everything that I've gone through has kind of led me to this place of being able to, I have a background in public relations. Communicating has always been something that comes naturally to me, and connecting with people is something that comes naturally to me. And I think just having that voice and being able to speak on something that is rare, but also to encourage people that might be going through similar things, and know that, what, you're not alone. I know people that maybe don't feel as comfortable sharing their medical experiences and what they go through. But for me, I find that I'm going through this to help others and to help myself.
Servitude, right? Like you've spent your life, at least your adult life, in a career in servitude to others.
Yeah.
Certainly knowing you, I know that you're, very much a person who likes to be able to give. And, this is definitely a rare, I'm going to say opportunity, although, I choose those words carefully, but I don't mean it with disrespect, but
no.
A rare opportunity to serve others in a way that most of us can never do.
And I truly believe that that's part of why I've gone through what I have and what I will continue to go through in the future. But it's to share these types of things that have helped me get through what should have, by most accounts, like I should be, and nobody would probably fault me if I was in the corner, like in the fetal position, what I've gone through. But that's not me. It's never been me. And so, I think the combination of my entire life has led to being able to share and hopefully teach what's helped me, and kind of practice what you preach. Like, I don't share things that I haven't done firsthand.
Yeah.
So
go to the bonus one.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so this kind of leads us to the bonus.
Yeah.
So it kind of brings all of it together, the breath work, the mindset, and connecting to something higher. And for me, that's tapping. So another word that people might be more familiar with is EFT, and that stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. And so you might hear people, like a lot of coaches, like Tony Robbins talks about tapping and or EFT. And tapping, essentially, it's actually rooted in ancient Chinese medicine, and it has to do with meridians and energy points on our bodies. And so we have these points, and this is literally what I did when I got to the OR door and was told, oh, the colorectal surgeon isn't actually here, isn't the one that's going to be doing your surgery. And I was like, okay, so like, what are my tools?
Drilling holes in the head.
Yeah. And so basically how this works is you're telling yourself, you know what, you're okay, you're safe, you're rewiring your thought process. And it does that through the meridians and the energy points that you're tapping. And it's something that is incredibly powerful. And it's my go-to. When I'm feeling overwhelmed, I start tapping, and it really does. They've done scientific research showing how this actually calms your body, calms the system. And so tapping, if you look that up, it's something that I swear by. It's really helped me in some of the more difficult moments that I've experienced.
So what would be the biggest learning experience about yourself that you came away with?
So for me, the biggest thing was the power of positive self-talk. And so a lot of people tend to be a lot harder on themselves than they are with their friends.
Yeah.
And so what I say is talk to yourself the way you would talk to a friend going through something really difficult. You wouldn't judge them. You wouldn't be difficult. You wouldn't blame them. Mm-hmm. So why do we do it to ourselves?
Yeah.
And so once I started rethinking, reevaluating the way I spoke to myself, that was a huge life-changing moment. The other thing is self-care. So someone like me who, as you said, spend a lot of time in service of others. I was, as a wedding planner, I was kind of like the last person, right? Like everyone else, I was there. That was my role, to take care of everybody else. And so I kind of became last. And it's important, especially what we've gone through in the last few years with the pandemic and everything else that has come with that. It's really important for you to take that time for yourself to recharge and rebalance, because otherwise anxiety or depression, like it's easy to spiral in either direction.
Yeah.
Understanding, like digging deep and really understanding my triggers, like why I felt the way I felt and why I thought the things I thought and believed the things I believed. A lot of us don't consciously stop and think like, why am I the way I am? Because it's just so natural. Like we're very influenced by culture, by our families, by our job, by whether or not you decide to have kids or not have kids. Like there's so many things.
Societal pressures, yes, for sure.
Exactly. And so digging deep and really understanding why I felt the way I felt. So in our society, I find we repress a lot of emotions. It's kind of, I've been doing this DBT therapy through the EDS community, and they talk about a ball, like what are those balls that are for pools, like a pool ball.
Okay.
That kind of has like a lot of bounce.
Okay.
We kind of push those emotions down. And as humans, we're sentient beings. We're meant to feel our emotions. We're not meant to push it down and then later, how we recently saw with Oscars, and like there's a lot that could be said to that situation, that why it happened. But if you look at it through the lens of repressed
trauma, emotion,
exactly. And so I think it's very important for all of us to really dig deep.
It's going to come up, right? Like emotions are going to come up. You can only keep them suppressed for so long.
Exactly.
And what ends up happening is we end up blowing up, as is case in point to your example that you just described with Will Smith and Chris Rock. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So when you talk about your learning experiences, then I just want to summarize them. For you, it was about self-acceptance. Well, first of all, let's go back. You said self-acceptance. Well, I'm saying self-acceptance, but you did, the first one for you is just becoming aware of your thoughts and your feelings and your beliefs and where those came from. So where they originated from, and then being able to accept yourself and talk to yourself the way that you would talk to a friend.
Yeah.
And then you talked about self-care. Okay.
Yeah.
And and those were the big learning experiences that you learned about yourself, that in being able to do all of those three things.
Well, how important they all are.
Right.
In being able to, because if you don't deal with the emotional stuff, when it comes to other obstacles that you deal with, your level of actually being able to deal with it becomes lower the more you have on. So by doing that and digging deep, I really say, like, we're meant to feel every emotion to its fullest, but then let it go, release it. So feel what you need to feel, learn what you need to learn from your experiences, and let go of the attachment of the emotion part of it, because that doesn't serve you. It's the lessons that you're learning, but it's very important to feel it. You just don't want to unpack and live there. That's the thing.
So then the last question I have for you is, what's the most important message that you can share with the audience today to help them to overcome their obstacles?
For sure. So I actually came up with something that I call a reality check.
I love this.
And so all these ideas and theories are kind of pulled from different, like from Buddhist teachings, Chinese medicine, like psychology, all wrapped up into this idea of a reality check. And so how I describe it is, imagine a plus sign, and then in the middle, a big circle that has reality. Now, on the far right is where, if you're too far on that right side of that
of the middle
plus side, you're living in the future. And what that means is you're living in the what ifs. What if that happens? What if this happens? It's a lot of anxiety and worry, fear of the unknown, thinking worst case scenarios all the time. And I know from personally, like being a wedding planner, I had to be 10 steps ahead. So I lived in the future a lot. And so getting back to the midpoint took some work. Let's just say that. And I found, now that I am more centered, I'm not missing out on those small moments that I used to miss out on, because I was always 10 steps ahead of everyone. So to the right, you're in the future. If you're too far on the left, you're living in the past. And that comes with shame and regret and dwelling on what could have been. There's a lot of guilt and there's a lot of overanalyzing.
That's where depression lives. Anxiety lives in the future. Depression lives in the past.
100%. So then when you look at the top and the bottom of this plus sign, I call it, the top is positive self-talk, and on the bottom I call it negative self-talk. And I'm using those words not because with any judgment, it's just to kind of show a degree. So on the top is like an overinflated
it's excessive
ego. It's excessive.
It's positive self-talk. Like it's
this idea of like toxic positivity.
Far from the reality. Exactly. Got it.
Exactly. It's very far removed from reality. And this is when you get like narcissists. The example that I give here is like Donald Trump. Like it's delusional.
Enough said.
So it's very arrogant.
Yes.
You get the idea. Then on the other end of the spectrum is what we call negative self-talk. And that's where like you have a lack of self-esteem. You feel like the victim. It's really easy to spiral into negative, like, oh, this happened, so the next bad thing is going to happen, and the next bad thing after that. And you could spiral really easily into that. It has to do with,
I know that in the top, like in your plus, in your positive self-talk, when it's in excess, and we've got the narcissistic tendencies. I
Yep.
know that the underlying issue with narcissism is worthiness issues. And at the very bottom, it's worthiness issues. But for me, if I'm understanding correctly, the bottom really speaks to the self-loathing and self-deprecation, right? Like we hate ourselves so much. But you're right in that that's where the ruminating thoughts come into place. And that's where we have that victim mentality comes into place as well.
It's also a place of a lot of judgment,
Right.
whether it's judgment of self or judgment of others.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so the reason I kind of outlined it the way I did is it gives you kind of cues as to if I'm feeling this way, maybe I'm living too much in the future. Like maybe it's time to kind of reel it back again. Then in the middle is where reality, where we're talking about the present moment, the now. There's a lot of spiritual teachers that talk about the power of being present in the now and in the moment. And that's where self-awareness comes in. It's you're present physically in your body, you're present in mind. It's outside of ego. So your ego, when it's at the top, where the positive, your ego is out of whack. And that's where the narcissism comes from.
Yeah.
When it's centered and in the present, the ego doesn't even really matter, if that makes sense, because it's not about you.
Yeah.
Right?
It's and it's not about you, but it's not about the perception of you.
100%.
Right? Because you can still, in your reality, it's your reality. But if I say something wrong to you, or I'm worried, I should say, about saying something wrong to you, that's when my ego's involved, because I'm worried about your opinion of me or your perception of me. But in the reality, I can still be in control of my thoughts, my feelings, and my beliefs.
Totally. And that in that place is where you feel peace.
Okay. You
feel just like you've taken that deep reality breath and released. Exactly. And so I recommend doing a reality check as often, like a few times a day at least, to kind of, make you realize that maybe your problems aren't as big or as bad as you thought they were, or maybe what happened in the past, just leave it in the past. You can't change it anyways. So the more you live in the present, you just live a more authentic, real, happy, beautiful life. And I think that's what all humans, all of us should strive for at the end of the day. So
what I love about this the most, so there's two components to it. One, I asked a lot of questions about this because you taught it to me last time, but I was still really learning. Now, I really appreciate the fact that we've had this interview a second time, because now I think I truly understand this concept that you created about this reality check. So thank you. And kind of allowing me to kind of go through it verbally, because that's how I process the information. But two, what I really love about this, the first time and this time, and that I'm so grateful that you're sharing this with the audience today, is that, and I said this to you last time, a lot of times we talk about, meditate, focus on your breath work, and focus on being present and in the moment. And it could be going for the walk, taking a look at the birds, hearing the birds, taking a look at the different colors on the trees versus the flowers, and really focusing on the vibrancy of the colors. But the thing is that while those are all excellent tools that you can use at any point in time, the reality check, I find, is the one tool where you literally pull it out of your pocket and it's like a quick 5-second scan, and you know where you're living, and then you can deal with it with one of the other tools.
100%.
Yeah, it's just the most brilliant thing in the world that you've just shared. Honestly, like I already told you last time, I'm stealing. I will always give you credit, but I'm 100% using this for life.
That's amazing.
But when we talk about, okay, be present and in the moment, breathe. Well, oftentimes people are like, okay, I'm trying to find my chi, but I can't find my chi.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they haven't figured out what is wrong other than something is wrong. And
Yeah.
your reality check just gives them I'm a little too far in the future. Okay, I'm having an anxiety attack because I'm freaking out because I have no control of the unknown, or I'm living too far in the past. I feel regretful, shame, guilt, I'm depressed, I'm overinflating my ego, but I know I'm lying to myself, ultimately, or I basically, shit kicked myself into the ground, 7 feet under. And all I'm doing is I've got the inner critic just telling me how worthless I am, and how useless I am. And that reality check just lets you do that. And then the tools that you gave with the meditation, the breathing technique, and the, what was the other one? The awareness, the tapping.
Breathing, meditation, connecting yourself to something higher.
That's what it was. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Those are the tools then that you can use to get you back into that center point of reality. Oh, anyway, honestly, it's the most brilliant thing. Yeah, you need to write a book. I'm gonna buy
honestly, I'm going to. I already have two books kind of like already working its way in here. So
get them out, and that reality check, and you need to trademark that. That is gold.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely gold. Thank you very much for sharing your story. And really kind of giving my member base, and you'll be sharing this with yours as well, but the opportunity to really understand what you went through, so that, when you talk about, focusing on breathing work, when you talk about using EFT, when you talk about, really channeling that connection with that which is greater, which you did with meditation. Those are really important tools, and they do help you to work through adversity, as you've been able to describe. But I also think it's really important that people understand that you've also been using these tools for a very long time. And the more that you flex those muscles, the easier it is, because you're able to self-regulate. And you talked about threshold, you talked about, when people haven't been able to flex those muscles, and their threshold for stress is so much lower, then the magnitude of a situation becomes that much greater.
For sure.
So I love that you explained this to us this evening, and I love the reality check. I love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. And for those of you who are watching, Christy is in our group. So if you've got any questions that you would like to ask, by all means, you can just tag her. She'll be able to answer those. If you've got any questions for me, by all means, let me know. And like I did mention at the beginning of this, I will be adding Christy's website so that you can look her up. And get in touch with her if you would like to get in touch with her. And I know, Christy, that you're going to be doing some podcasts as well. So you'll be able to share those with us in the future too. So thank you very much for your time, Christy. And for those of you who are watching, here's to showing up for you. Have yourself a fantastic rest of your day. Bye, everybody.